I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know.
It was in London.
But Pam said, shut up and get in here, and I'm like, okay, Pam. So that's what I do.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said.
Shut up and get in here.
Boy, he did want to.
Yeah, Tim thought that Ireland, London, Ireland, he was the only one that.
He worked on it. Yeah, like right in front of it.
Thanks for making grandma buy the cookies. Now, it's time for the pledge, and then we can call this into order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we call the, ready to lead?
Yep.
Call the September 13th, 2016 City Council meeting to order. All council members present, Administrator Dawson, Engineer Ryan, Attorney Riggs. Next order is citizens' comments. Is there anyone that wants to address the council?
Good.
Craft?
Mr. Mayor and the City Council, my name is Wayne Medcraft. I live at 418 Gunderson Boulevard. You have a copy that, given you copies of what I want to talk about briefly. Due to a stroke I had, I am now forced to be a pedestrian. I'm not real stable. And here's one request is that we just go to NDOT and get the cotton picking crosswalks painted. You can scarcely see where they were. And I'm using the point, I think that's meaningful. The 14th Amendment of the Constitution guarantees all citizens equal protection. Your only protection in a crosswalk is, in fact, the painted stripes. So people will respect that and stop. You go to Faribault, you go to other medium-sized cities, they all have crosswalks that are painted. We don't. So I'm requesting that you folks go to NDOT and convince them that my life as a citizen of Kenyon is worth this as much as perhaps someone from Cannon Falls.
No. All of us.
Huh?
All of us.
The second one is just an update. I've given you copies. That's the one with a picture of the train station.
Mm-hmm.
We're making progress on the train station. I've met with, I've given you an outline there, and I've met with people we're gonna try to make it a successful meeting. Met with Diane Rasmussen, we got space set aside over at the home, and we don't know, 10 people show or 100 people show, but the whole goal of restoring the building, you folks know, the outside of the station looks good. The interior is in shambles. Both of the floors are shut. The floor in the waiting room area is tiled. In an unheated building, you can guess what happens in the wintertime. And this and puckers, I would actually call it a trip hazard. Maybe your lawyer, or you might want to go over and take a look at it yourself. So that's a full function to form this group to basically raise money and to help the city maintain it. I'm not trying to take away from the party value of it, but make it a little more interesting to see. And we'll hold the meeting on the 21st down at the home. Any questions?
No?
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda?
We need to
Pardon me?
add the hiring of,
Oh, yeah, hiring of the firemen
no,
No.
liquor store employee.
liquor store plans.
So that would,
Adam Severson.
New business?
Yeah.
The new business, Adam Severson.
that'd be after the approving two firemen. Anything else?
It'd be after the request for liquor people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. That's all?
Yep.
So do we have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed. Consent agenda. Do we have a motion to adopt the consent agenda as printed, or is there anything that should be removed?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That motion passed.
Mayor, can you tell me who did the motion and second?
Fred made the motion, Richard seconded.
Okay, thank you.
So we move on to item 6, presentations and public hearings. Jessica
Sade. Sade.
Sade
Yep.
from the Ward Zero Deaths Program, Dubuque County Health and Human Services.
Stand up, sir. She makes me look good.
Good evening, Mayor Engel and members of the City Council. My name is Jessica Sade, and I'm the Community Health Specialist for Goodhue County, and also the Goodhue County Towards Zero Death, also known as TZD, Safe Roads Grant Coordinator. And Officer Mike.
Jessica, give me 1 second here to get your thing, your PowerPoint on here.
I just said 20 yet.
Yep.
We're talking highway death.
Take a second here for this.
First, got an apple on the case.
Council packet, which is like 10 times longer than this, uploaded in like 10 seconds. This thing.
We can draw off some placards really quick and just pause.
Here we go.
sing a song or something.
Yeah, something like that, all right. Get out of there.
Computers are so bogged down that it would be a novel idea to have about placards and writing it all up.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay.
It's like the highways are getting more and more crowded until pretty much parking lot.
That's what all computers will too. So,
And
all right, go ahead.
Yeah. So Officer Mike is the enforcement coordinator for TZD here in Kenyon. So what is TZD? The Towards Zero Death approach is based on the belief that even one traffic-related death on our roads is unacceptable. Next slide. The TZD program team has identified several major focus areas for communities working to reduce traffic injuries and deaths. And so the program recognizes that a combination of strategies from different focus areas is often most effective for solving a particular problem. The 4 E's that we work with represent education, enforcement, engineering, and emergency medical and trauma services. Next slide. As you can see, the Minnesota traffic fatalities trend from 1995 to 2002 was on the rise. The Minnesota TZD program was formed in 2003 as a deliberate approach to counteract this trend. In 2003, 655 traffic fatalities occurred on Minnesota roads. The orange side of this graph shows this trend. Now, if you look towards the right side of the graph, in 2014, despite increases in the number of licensed drivers, registered motor vehicles, and vehicle miles traveled, there were 361 traffic fatalities in Minnesota in 2014, which is a 45% reduction since 2003. In 2014, deaths and serious injuries were at their lowest since World War II. Challenges remain, and unfortunately, 2015 was a tragic year on Minnesota roads, and we saw an increase in roadway fatalities. 411 people lost their lives on Minnesota roads. 411 traffic fatalities also marks the most people killed on Minnesota roads since 2010. Some of the Minnesota traffic crashes in 2015, there were 74,772 traffic crashes that were reported to the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. 138,000 motor vehicles and 181,000 people were injured or involved in these crashes. 411 people died, like I mentioned, and 29,981 people were injured. At an estimated economic cost to Minnesota of $1,773,291,000. On an average day, on an average day in 2015 in Minnesota, there were 205 crashes, 1 death, 82 injuries, and an average daily cost of $4,858,135. Some of the highlights from the Minnesota 2015 crash facts: traffic fatalities increased. Safety belt use in Minnesota is about 94%. The fatality rate in Minnesota per 100 million vehicle miles traveled remains low. Every crash category was higher in 2015, including pedestrian, bicycle, and motorcycle crashes. In many categories, the numbers of deaths more than doubled. Pedestrian fatalities increased. After reducing pedestrian fatalities to 17 in 2014, they shot back up to 41 in 2015. More than half of these deaths occurred in the 7-county metro area, but in Goodhue County, we did have a serious injury involving a pedestrian. The Goodhue County 2015 crash facts specifically, we had 7 fatal crashes. We had 204 crashes involving injury. We had 491 crashes involving property damage. In 2015, we had a total of 702 crashes. In 2014, we had 850 total crashes. In 2015, we had 8 people who were killed in Goodhue County on our roads. In 2014, 10. In 2015, 293 people were injured in Goodhue County on our roads, and in 2014, we had 265. Next slide. In 2015, there were 2 crashes in Kenyon. 3 people sustained moderate injuries, and 12 Others were involved in the crashes but uninjured. In the last 5 years, there were 25 crashes, 12 people with moderate or minor injuries, no fatalities, and a total of 58 people involved in the crashes. And the information is from the Minnesota Office of Traffic Safety. Another part of the TDD program is a fatal review committee, and the goal of this committee is to identify contributing factors of crashes, make recommendations on how to prevent similar crashes in the future, and develop key messages for the public. At a minimum, the fatal review should include representation from local and state law enforcement, county and state district traffic engineers, emergency medical services, and then the TDD Safe Roads Coordinator. The Goodhue County Fatal Review Committee met on March 1st and reviewed fatal and serious injury crashes that occurred in the second half of 2015. We thoroughly reviewed for leading factors and recommendations on how to prevent similar future crashes. Of those crashes reviewed, the following are the key messages for the public. The majority, 5 out of 7, were single vehicle involved crashes. Another key message is to wear your seatbelt. Many of the motorcycle crashes involved those without endorsements or appropriate training for their size motorcycle. Alcohol or inattentive driving was a factor in the majority of crashes. And also just to mention, when people think of distracted driving, most people think of texting and driving. Actually, in Goodhue County, we've had now 2 serious injuries that have involved use of the GPS system within their cars. So something to note on that. Then here are a few pictures from events the Goodhue County TCD has participated in within the community. In August, we also participated in an event at the Goodhue County Fair. We also participated in the Guns vs. Hoses community event on September 11th. TCD has worked with local entities to provide education and awareness on work zone safety. With the construction happening throughout the county, such as in Wanamingo and Red Wing, we have provided information on the changes and have stressed safe behaviors. We have had a strong presence within the schools this past year. We have worked directly with Pine Island, Goodhue, and Zumbrota, and we are reaching out to other local schools throughout the county this upcoming school year. Our local enforcement agencies have done great work working within our communities, working on high visibility mobilization, such as quick get or ticket, drive sober or get pulled over, speed enforcement, distracted driving, and the Ted Foss Move Over Day. They have volunteered their time at many different events throughout the past year. And that is my presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
To sum up, quite a bit of progress has been made, but quite a bit remains.
Yes, quite a bit more work. Thank you very much.
You. Item 7, engineering. Joe, data on First Street.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your packet is a memo on the First Street Improvement Project. And even though there wasn't any active construction going on last month, there was quite a bit of activity behind the scenes in the project administration as we work towards getting that project finalized and getting information ready for the assessments. So reviewing the information in your packet, just to summarize the status of the construction activities, all the construction is completed, all the punch list items have been completed. The only 2 items remaining are testing on the sanitary sewer, which can't be done until after the sewer has been in place. They have to televise it, and they also have to pull the manhole through to make sure that the pipe is in the good round condition. And both of those have to wait a minimum of 30 days till after the install is completed. So the contractor is working on getting that scheduled, and I anticipate that will be done by the end of this month. Then we did meet with the contractor on August 25th to review the final construction quantities. As you know, it's a line item contract, so we track the quantities and pay a unit price for each quantity of item constructed. And we record our quantities, they also record quantities, and sometimes there's discrepancies between the measurements. So we met with them at the end of the contract to review any discrepancies we had and get those resolved, come to a mutual agreement as to what the correct measurement was. So we went through all of that, and based on that, we've updated the pay request and prepared pay request number 5 in your packet. At this time, it's our understanding that all of the quantities now have been finalized with the contractor, so we have the final construction costs that we know, so we can prepare the assessment information, and we can work towards getting the contract closed out once those final sanitary sewer testing items are completed. One of the items that came up during the August 25th meeting, and I know we've talked about this before, is during the course of construction, they did hit 2 veins of hard rock in the sanitary sewer installation. When we had done the borings for the design, we had encountered some soft rock that was weathered limestone that could be dug with a standard excavator, but we did not incorporate any provisions for hard rock into the contract. They did hit some hard rock in 2 spots on the contract, or well, during the construction. And so we did track that and keep detailed measurements on the length, width, and depth of that hard rock, so we could calculate cubic yards. And we had calculated, based on our measurements that we took, 191.48 cubic yards of rock that they had to break up and excavate as part of the work. And they agreed with that measurement. So we negotiated the value of 120 cubic yards per cubic, $120 per cubic yard for that rock. And that equates to a value of $22,977.60. Now, since
You're okay, but on this here, where exactly was that? Was that on the main, or was that on the service line?
there was, it actually covered a portion of the main line between manholes D and E. It was all within the block between Red Wing Avenue and Forest. The majority of it was on the main line, but there were 5 services on the north side of First Street where there was rock in the trenches we were digging in the service as well.
So how are these people supposed to hook onto these service lines if they got rock?
Well, I guess that's a question where they're going to need to work with their plumber to see how deep their line is coming over the home. If they don't need, we kept it as deep as we could, so they have the maximum flexibility for the extension from the end of the service to their home. Now, if they don't need all that depth, if their plumber comes out, checks their depth, calculates the measure the distance, calculates, they can come up right away off the end of our pipe and then come at a steeper grade up towards their house. But if they need the depth, then their excavator is going to have to be able to
How deep were these lines?
on average, you're probably about, I don't have the exact information with me, but probably on the order of 10 feet.
So actually, it's kind of tough to, when you got a line and then come up, that's just a trouble spot. You wanted to bring the line up, and you could have gone over this rock. And I really seriously question this 191 yards. That is 10 truckloads of rock. I don't know how many feet was this?
I don't have the detailed measurements with me, but I can produce those if you'd like.
Because that's a lot of rock. I mean, that's 20 loads of rock. But I'm really seriously on the service lines.
And let me just think through this. On average, the rock was between 2 and 4 feet thick. And so if we say an average of 3 foot, that's 1 yard. And if the trench is roughly 5 to 6 feet wide, that's roughly 2 yards wide. So if you have a 2-yard cross section, that means it was about 100 yards of length, which is about 300 feet.
300 feet.
So if they hit.
And all the borings you didn't run across any of this hard rock?
Well, we did 3 borings. We did 1 in each block. No, we had weathered limestone, and they did encounter that, and they were able to dig it to a point. But there was a point where they couldn't remove the rock without bringing in what they call a hammer, to hammer the rock and break it into pieces.
This is almost 5% of the bid. There's no bid.
Correct. And one thing to keep in perspective is, well, if we would have put a line item in there for the rock, we would have paid for it in the original construction quantity. And it also could have influenced the price that we got on the rest of the main line. If a contractor thinks they're going to run into rock, they may, beef up the price on the general main line that we got. And when you look at the bids we got on this project, we received 13 bids. And the low bidder, Hazelton, who was our contractor, they gave us an especially good price on the contract, on the sanitary sewer. When you look at the price for just the main line work, the sewer main, the bid price that Hazelton gave us, the total cost, was $33,700 lower than the average of the 13 bids. So even taking into account the fact that we've got roughly a $23,000 change order, adding that onto their bid price they gave us, they're still $10,000 lower than the average bid price we received on the contract for the sanitary sewer.
In other words, if we would have had more soil borings, we would have kind of covered our butts here a little more.
Well, yeah, we would have paid more for the borings up front, and I don't know that we would have saved any money in the long run. Because this cost, instead of coming in a change order now, would have been in the contract up front.
Whether you knew it ahead of time or not, the rock was.
The rock is there, that's the point, yeah.
You had to
It was
work
nice
with
to know
Yeah.
what we're getting into.
We couldn't, and we would not have been able to design around the rock.
I'm really concerned about these service lines being 10 feet deep in rock and how these people are supposed to hook on. Really, it's, I've dug in that area in some of these basements and I've never ever hit rock. So I mean, there could be a big surprise when they come to hook on, and especially if the contractor doesn't have the equipment to get through this rock, all of a sudden they're gonna have a very large bill to hook onto their sewer line.
Well, I think that's something we want to communicate with those residents. And keep in mind too, just because we encountered rock on the service line, I'd have to go back and check the notes from our inspector that was on site, whether that rock was near the main, and by the time they got to the end of the service, they were out of the rock, or if they were still in the rock at the point where the service was capped. So it could be that they had rock, the hard rock near the main, and as they were digging the sewer service out towards the property line, and by the time they got out there, they had come out of the hard rock and moved back into the weathered rock or the typical soil. So it might be that not all of the 5 services that involve the rock have rock at the end of the service where we capped it for it.
Much like any other excavation, until you break ground, you don't know for sure
Correct.
what you're getting into.
And like they always say with geological or geotechnical reports, the information is only good at the spot you bore it and on the day you bore it. Whether or not you find groundwater, whether or not you find rock, it's that specific location and that specific time. So since that hard rock was not included in the original bid, it would require a change order to incorporate it into the contract at this time. And we have prepared change order number change order number 1 in the amount of $22,977.60. The contractor has signed it. I've got 4 original copies here with me tonight for signature if it is approved. As I noted, even with the addition of this change order onto the project price, the total sanitary sewer price received from this contractor is still $10,000 under the average bid price we received when we went off with competitive bids. And then we had prepared pay request number 5, which does incorporate the change order number 1, and that's included in your packet as well. And you can see that the total value of the work then from construction is $440,768.06. Now, the original contract was $430,659.69. So even with the inclusion of the change order number 1, the final construction cost is about $10,000 over budget, which is about 2.3%. So still pretty reasonable compared to the original construction contract that we had for the project. Given those final construction costs, we have done the preliminary assessment calculations. As you know, in order for assessments to be certified for the next year's property tax rolls, they need to be reported to the county by November 15th of this year. So we wanted to get the assessment process started. We've done the initial calculations to the point where we have the total project cost identified and the total proposed aggregate assessment amount. We have put those into resolution form. Resolutions 2016-20 and 2016-21 have been prepared, and they're in your packet for consideration. 2016-20 identifies the total project cost and then the portion that would be assessed, the aggregate total of the assessments. Keep in mind the numbers that we put in these resolutions right now, we want them to be conservative, because once you declare these numbers by resolution, when we do the actual assessment hearing, we can have numbers that are lower than these amounts, but we cannot have numbers that are higher than these amounts. So these numbers are always conservative at this point to allow us to make sure that we don't get ourselves into a corner when we actually finalize the assessment roll and present it to the public at the assessment hearing. So given all of that, the schedule of events is shown on page 3 of the memo in your packet. Tonight, the items recommended for approval would be to approve change order number 1, then to approve pay request number 5, which includes change order number 1, then to approve resolutions 2016-20 and 2016-21, and that would authorize staff then to submit the notice to the newspaper this week for publication in the Kenyon Leader next Wednesday. Then we would finalize the calculation for the assessments, which would identify the specific assessment to each individual property along the project, and each property would then receive a mailing at least 2 weeks prior to the assessment hearing. So those mailings would go out by the end of next week. And then the recommended time and date for the assessment hearing, as stated in resolution 2016-21, would be 6 p.m. on October 11th, which is the night of your next regular council meeting. So we have the assessment hearing at 6 p.m. right in advance of the council meeting. And assuming that everything goes okay at the assessment hearing, council could then approve or adopt the final assessment roll at the council meeting that night. And then the amounts will be certified to the county, and anyone that doesn't pay their assessments in full prior to the end of the year would then have that assessment rolled onto their tax rolls, property taxes. So with that, I'm glad to answer any other questions on the project. Otherwise, we submit those items for consideration.
Have other items to bring up? We have a motion to approve change order number 1.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Pay request number 5. Motion to approve.
We'll make the motion.
Yeah, I will second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
That passes. Resolution 2016-20, resolution declaring cost to be assessed and ordering preparation of proposed assessment for First Street reconstruction project.
We're gonna do it again?
Sure.
Okay, make the motion. Okay.
You guys make a good team. All in favor?
Aye.
And finally, resolution 2016-21, resolution for hearing on proposed assessment.
So moved.
We gotta make the motion first. I'll make the motion.
And I'll
We
second.
approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Ah, that's a lot of work.
There we go.
Thank you, council.
Now, we move on to update on fire facility project.
Another change, yes, unfortunately, it's the night of the change order, which is
Yeah.
never the kind of council meeting I like to have, believe me. Fire station project, in your packet is a memo with some attachments regarding the project. Some updates since the last council meeting. As of the last council meeting, we did not even have the contracts executed yet. We were still in the process of doing that. So since the last council meeting, the review got finished. The city attorney was able to get all the issues resolved, all of his comments and questions on the contract. Contractor was able to update those. The bonding company updated their information. And so the city attorney signed his certificate on August 17th saying that he was satisfied with the contract. So then that same day, the mayor was able to sign the contracts and the USDA representative was able to sign their concurrence. We did have the pre-construction conference then that day as well, and we issued the notice to proceed immediately upon the conclusion of that meeting. And the official start date for that notice to proceed was the following Monday, August 22nd. So that starts the clock ticking on the project, and they have the 180 days to substantial completion, which put that substantial completion date, I believe, at February 17th. As far as construction, they did have the official start date on August 22nd. I think during the time between the pre-construction, they were moving some materials on site in their trailer and getting set up. But during the weeks of August 22nd and 29th, they were on site. They did the bulk of the tree clearing, topsoil stripping, got the erosion control set up, got their pipe delivered to the site. This week, they did the water main cut-in. They scheduled a shutdown with KMU, did the water main cut-in, got all the water main put in. They've been working on the sanitary sewer. And they started to dig the excavation for the building foundation. They have submitted pay request number 1, which covers through August 31st. The request includes a down payment on the precast wall panels. The wall panel supplier requires a down payment in order to start the production line and get that whole process started. So they issued an invoice to the contractor, who then in turn passed that invoice along to us in the form of this pay request. And they've also requested approximately 15% of the general conditions item, which the primary cost in that is their bonding cost, put together the bonds for the project, and then some of their other initial setup costs like their job trailer and temporary power hookups and their temporary sanitary facilities, those things like that. So the total amount of the pay request, I have to look back and see.
$73,068.10.
Yeah, exactly right, $81,000 minus the standard retainage. So the amount requested from payment is $73,068.10. We have submitted the information with USDA for concurrence. They're always the last one to sign, so they would sign their concurrence after you approve it. They're requesting some backup documentation, such as the invoice from the concrete supplier, so we furnished that to them, waiting to hear back their final blessing on the amount of the pay request. So our recommendation would be that the pay request would be approved contingent upon the concurrence of the USDA. A couple of other things on the project. The administrator and I had a meeting with the contractor and the gas company, I don't know, August 25th. I guess I did put that date in my memo, August 25th. We had a meeting on site to talk about getting a new gas line run into the building, because the gas line currently does not exist that far down Centennial Drive. While we're on site, the contractor, after we were done talking about the gas service, they brought us out to show us a condition they had discovered on the site. When they did the tree clearing, they found there was a culvert in the midst of the trees near Centennial Drive that hadn't been spotted in the site design because it was in amongst all the trees. Once the trees were cleared away and that culvert was exposed, we realized that that culvert was going to be buried by about 4 feet of dirt with the grading that's going to be done from the parking lot. So in order to keep the drainage in that culvert functioning, we need to make an amendment to the design, which essentially is to add a manhole at the end of that culvert and then redirect that, extend the pipe over to the west property line so that the water can continue to flow along the course it does now. It flows generally to the northwest towards, essentially follow the existing tree line up past the North Foldcraft plant. So we put together a revised storm sewer plan to show that culvert extension, and we provided that to the contractor and requested a quote on that work. We did an estimate at the time we provided it to them, and I had estimated approximately $9,700 for that storm sewer extension. They came back with a quote of $7,228. So that quote is very reasonable compared to what we had estimated the cost to be. And we have included a copy of their proposal, so you can see their written quote on the work. We prepared draft of change order number 1 for the contract based on that quote, and we've included a copy in your packet. And we have reviewed this with the USDA, so they're aware of this condition. They understand that the change order is required, and again, they're going to concur on the change order once it's approved by the city. So the same process in the pay request, we would recommend approval of the change order contingent upon the USDA concurrence.
Now, I do have a few questions on this. Unlike that rock, which we didn't put there, this culvert was installed by someone at some point in time to, what does it drain, who put it in, and why did we not know it was there till we uncovered it?
Right, well, yeah, and, well, the first thing we should consider is it discharges in the public right-of-way. So where that culvert discharges, the water that comes out is in the public right-of-way, so it would be considered public drainage at that point, that it's currently being accommodated by the public right-of-way. So my opinion as your city engineer would be that we need to be able to perpetuate the function of that culvert. Since it's currently, that drainage is utilizing the public right-of-way, we need to be able to accommodate that continued drainage. As far as why it wasn't noticed, you're right, it should have been noticed, but with its location in the midst of that tree line, was simply not noticed. When the topographic survey was done, they didn't find it in amongst the trees. When they shot the trees, they shot the edges of the trees and picked out the bigger trees, but they didn't find the culvert.
Right, well, I guess what I was asking is, when I say who installed this and when, I mean, there should have been a record of it.
Oh, correct, yeah.
So does this take the water from the west and direct it to the ditch? Is that?
I believe it's taking the water from the south, bringing it across Centennial. The culvert drains from south to north.
It takes all Fullcraft's roof water and runs it across the road and dumps it.
So, yeah, I don't know the original construction of the culvert installation.
So that was probably done when the original building was put in there. And
So this goes underneath Centennial Drive then?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so the culvert's running north and south?
Yes, yep, and it discharges on the north side of Centennial, and then the water generally flows northwest across the corner of our fire station site, following that existing tree line that was there.
Back towards the building here, around this way.
Yeah, back towards where
Towards the west.
where that existing
Yeah,
fire
north,
hydrant
yeah.
was up near the north, in the corner of the north plant. Yeah.
It was, certainly was put in by Fullcraft. I mean, if you look at that,
Kenyon developed that separation probably.
when that building was built, and you look at the age of that culvert, but one thing we gotta keep in mind is we don't wanna cover that culvert up, because that becomes a liability issue for us. If we stop that storm flow from going under that road.
The water's going.
So it's, yeah, I mean, we have, something we have to keep in
So
mind.
where's this water gonna go now? I mean, we got a culvert that's draining the brook water, so there's definitely water coming. So where's that water gonna go now? Where do we, I guess
Well, right now it discharges in the north ditch of Centennial Drive, and it continues to drain northwest towards essentially towards the corner of the north Fullcraft plant. So when you look at how it fits in with the proposed work on the site, the new driveway that's coming in right there, the existing culvert discharges on the east side of the new driveway. So if we build a new driveway, we would bury that existing culvert and that water would be essentially trapped. So what we're going to do is put a manhole on the end of that culvert and extend the pipe beneath our new driveway to the west to where our grading is ending, and then we'll daylight that culvert again so the water can come back out into the open and continue to follow the waterway, the course that it
It'll
follows.
go down to the northwest corner of the
It'll continue to
property
flow.
and then go east.
Right, it'll continue to flow where it does now. We're just essentially about 70 feet of where it currently flows overland. We're going to enclose it in a pipe to get it underneath our driveway so we can discharge it again and let it continue to flow overland.
have to move the driveway?
No, we couldn't with the driveway because then we'd be,
What is it, 4.5 feet below or something?
yeah, it's about 4.5 feet to fill, but we wouldn't be able to move the driveway because the driveway would then run into the building.
The difference in the elevation is important.
Yeah, there's a plan sheet that I included in the packet that kind of shows, and I put a circle on where that culvert is.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. I think it's, the last page, yeah. If you're looking at that circle down in the lower left.
Would it be easier just to hook that culvert to our storm sewer, or to our storm drain?
No, we'd have to go about twice as far to get into a storm drain, and our other storm drain isn't low enough. And we don't want all of this water to go through our pond, and our pond is sized for what we're building on our site. We don't want the water from this culvert to wind up going through our pond as well, because then our pond wouldn't be large enough to do what it needs to do for the stormwater treatment. So the most efficient and cheapest way to deal with this is simply in essence, we're extending the culvert. We're just extending the culvert and redirecting it, and then letting the water discharge again and continue to flow overland to the same destination it flows now.
When it goes to that northwest corner, would that eventually still end up in our storm drain, in our storm pond?
No.
It won't?
No, if you watch a look at the site, you can see there's kind of a natural draw where that part's draining towards the northwest, and then our site's draining to the northeast towards Highway 56. So essentially, the change consists of one manhole, about 65 feet of pipe, and then the new flared end section to discharge the water again where our grading ends.
If everyone's got all the questions answered on that, then we move on to the,
The sanitary sewer.
correct.
Yes, and this was something that Public Works brought up at the conclusion of our pre-construction conference, when we were all done. They came up and wanted to talk to the contractor and I about this, and they said that we have that existing sanitary sewer that extends from essentially the northwest corner of our site in the southeast direction across our site, and it serves Foldcraft, the South Foldcraft line. And Public Works indicated they weren't certain of the condition of that pipe. Now, we had anticipated, based on our measurements of the existing manholes, that that pipe was shallow enough to where we needed to insulate it underneath the new parking lot. So we already had provisions in the contract to expose that pipe so we can install insulation over it. And Public Works wanted to know if, when we had that pipe exposed, if they could check the condition of it. If there was damaged pipe, could they replace sections of the pipe that might be damaged? And we talked about that, and with the fact we have a contractor on site who essentially is managing that site, we couldn't hire another contractor to come in and do work like that. So our options were really to either have the city forces do it, any replacement like that themselves, or else hire our contractor to do that kind of repair work. And the city indicated that they didn't really have the capacity to undertake that kind of repair work. And so it made the most sense that since we had the contractor on site with their sewer equipment, that if they encountered this work, could they just replace it for us? So they did provide a quote to do that, and the quote they provided was $35 per foot of pipe if it needed to be replaced. And when you look back at First Street, the average bid price we received for new sanitary sewer there was $37.38. So again, the price they gave us for replacement was reasonable compared to recent quotes we had for sewer work in the city. So at this point, there's no, this issue hasn't come up yet, but we wanted to have a proposal from them in writing so that if it did come up, we had the ability to address it. The USDA wanted to be sure that we had as much information so we were as prepared as possible. So at this point, it could be that all of the pipe, when it's exposed, is in good condition and doesn't need to be replaced, so this issue could completely go away. It could be that we have one pipe that needs to be replaced. It could be that we have several pipes.
Now, there's a question. Is this all going to be exposed at once so we know how much?
Well,
Because it could potentially reach a point where there is so much that needs to be replaced that it'd be better off to do the whole thing, and then it could be put in deeper, which would get away from the insulation.
potentially, but one thing that's in our favor is this is PVC pipe. It's not the old clay pipe.
Okay.
So the PVC pipe generally is going to be more
Yeah.
durable. So we know it's a newer line since it's the PVC rather than the old clay.
And it's
we know-
likely a small portion of it if there is a problem.
Correct, and it's been sitting in that, well, essentially it was a vacant lot since it was installed. So it's had no traffic loading, no heavy vehicles running over it. So it's a good quality pipe that's in a very low impact situation. So our hope is that it's going to be just fine when it's exposed. Now, an update since they've been doing the work is they did dig down to set the manhole and run their sewer line over towards their building, and they found the sewer was actually deeper than was anticipated. It was a couple feet deeper than anticipated. So we're having them spot check the depth of the pipe every 25 feet, and where it's more than 6 feet deep, we won't even need to expose it and insulate it. We can just let it sit as be. So what they're going to do over the next couple of days is dig a hole every 25 feet, get a measurement on the depth of the pipe, and they'll have a public works representative there so they can check the condition of the pipe. And if it's deeper than 6 feet and in good condition, then we can just cover it back up and it can stay right in place. If it's less than 6 feet deep, we'll expose it and insulate it. And if it's in bad condition, then we'll have to replace a section. But at this point, I'm thinking, based on what we found out so far, I'm thinking the chances that we'll have to replace any pipe is, probably less than 10%. And the amount of pipe that we're gonna need to insulate is gonna be less than we had planned on. So we've already talked with the contractor that there potentially could be a price deduct coming back our way if they don't need to insulate the original quantity of pipe that we anticipated in the bid. So that's a
That's
little bit,
good news.
a little bit of good news for a change, yes. So that, so really the only action to take on the sanitary sewer replacement would be to accept their proposal of $35 a foot, and then just authorize staff to monitor the condition, and if a replacement is needed, we would replace a pipe, and then we would prepare a change order and bring it back to you at the next meeting. And we review this with USDA, and they're comfortable with that approach. Other than that, as far as the upcoming work, we talked about the water main shutdown. That already has occurred, and the water main is in place. That construction is done. They're working on the sewer work right now, the sanitary sewer work. They haven't started the storm sewer work yet. They're still working on digging the pond and getting everything ready for that. They just about done with the tree clearing. They've still got stumps and things left out there to grind. Obviously, they're working on the site grading. And then the biggest thing they've been working on this week, well, started late last week and this week, is the building foundation. And that's something that the administrator and I just met with the contractor this afternoon at 4 o'clock, and we've got some very current information to share with you on that. The building footings need to be dug down approximately 5 feet below grade. It's 4 foot to the top of the footing, and the footing is a foot thick. Now, we had soil borings done across the site back in September of last year, prior to doing the design work over the winter. And it's standard procedure, you know, because we can only get soil borings at certain locations, and the design of the building wasn't even done at that point. So when you look at actually the map of borings we took versus how the building lays out now, the building is, our borings and the buildings are a little bit offset from each other, because the building tweaked a little bit, the location tweaked a little bit in the final design. But it's standard procedure when the contractor comes out and actually digs the trench for the foundations, that they then have, we, as a project, have a geotechnical engineer come out and test the soils in the bottom of the foundation to ensure that it's stable to support the weight of the building. And so that happened last Friday. They dug the first part of the trench, and we contracted with Chosen Valley Testing to come out and do some geotechnical testing on the trench. So they started that on Friday, they finished it yesterday, and they issued a report this morning. They had indicated in the contractor that they did find some spots that were soft in the trench that were going to need additional excavation. What they essentially do is, if you find a soft spot, you over-excavate it deeper and then fill it back in with a rock to stabilize and strengthen that trench so that it can support the weight of the concrete footing.
So we've got some place to put this hard rock that we just had to pay to get taken out, right?
It was timing because they could have found it from one to the other. Actually, different type of rock. What we do is, because actually when they dug, and the administrator and I saw it today, and I actually took a picture of it, down near the southeast corner of the building, they actually encountered some groundwater that, when they dug the trench and came back the next morning, water had seeped into the trench, and there was about 2 or 3 inches of water sitting in the bottom of the trench. So getting that area dug out and replaced with the rock will be able to handle that water, because the water can flow freely through that rock and not impact it like it would a clay type of soil. So the point of this is that when we bid the project, of course, we don't know what the exact geotechnical conditions will be. We have an idea based on our original report, but we get the final determination once the foundation trench is actually dug. So the amount of soil corrections beneath the foundations recommended by the geotechnical engineer now, at the time of construction, is greater than what the original recommendation was last year. So in essence, they found some different conditions, probably some of it being due to the wet conditions we've had this summer, and those soils being saturated or higher than moisture contents when they were last year when we tested them. So at this point, they've given us a preliminary estimate of what they think the corrections are going to be. And based on that, the contractor has given us a ballpark figure of what they anticipate the cost would be to make the corrections. But we don't know the exact amount until the contractor does some more excavation in the trench, and the geotechnical engineer comes out and tests it and certifies that it is stable. I'm not a geotechnical engineer, and our architect's not a geotechnical engineer, and there's a contractor. And so really what we need a geotechnical engineer to certify that the trench is stable before the concrete footings can be poured.
You don't want the leaning tower of Pisa.
Correct, and that's what the contractor says. They said they don't want to be coming back next year because a portion of the building is settled or a wall panel is cracked or something like that. So they as much as anybody, want to make sure that the foundation is set, on a strong foundation.
So all this is leading up to change order number 2?
All this is leading up to change order number,
2 or 3 or?
well, assuming nothing happens with the sanitary sewer work, we change order number 2. And so what the administrator and I met with the contractor today, because this is all very, it's a very fluid process, and it's all very time sensitive in the fact that we're in the middle of September, we're trying to get the site as far along as we can before the winter comes. So, and with the council meeting tonight, we wanted to be sure we had as much information pulled together to review with you tonight. So what we agreed upon with the contractor is, based on the geotechnical engineer's report, and by the way, the geotechnical engineer is hired by the city, so they're working as an objective third party. They're not working for the contractor, so they're giving us objective, impartial opinions. Based on the recommendations that they've made, the contractor will do the additional foot of excavation in the foundation trench, and they'll have the geotechnical engineer back out tomorrow afternoon to recheck.
Additional, excuse me, an additional foot of excavation?
1 foot of depth.
So they have to go down an additional foot?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, the trench is, right now is about 5 feet deep, about 5 feet wide. And so the initial recommendation from the geotechnical engineer says, we recommend that the sandy clay soils be removed and replaced with engineered fill, which is rock. We anticipate the depth of the fill to be approximately 1 foot. So based on that, the contractor's going to start. Yes, the contractor's going to start by taking another foot on the entire perimeter, and the geotechnical engineer is going to come out tomorrow and check the soils again. And then they can make determinations. If it's still unstable, the contractor can go another 6 inches or another 6 inches until we get to the point where the geotechnical engineer says, yes, the site is stable. At that point,
And this has to be for the whole perimeter?
correct.
It
Yep.
can't just be in the spots?
No, we want to make sure we have a stable foundation for the whole perimeter. Right. And then the survey, once we've established where that stable elevation is, the surveyor will document that elevation in shots all around the perimeter of the building, and we'll have a record of that. And we can compare that record to the foundation plan and see how much extra they had to dig. Based on that, we can determine the cubic yards of additional excavation and the cubic yards of the rock they have to use to fill. And based on that, that will determine the value of this soil correction beneath the foundations that would constitute change order number 2. Now, we want to make sure we get this work, we want the change order to be in place before they actually do the work. So the schedule we've talked about with contractors, they'll do the excavation tomorrow, get the soils engineer out to check and certify that the foundation is stable, that the excavation is stable, get the shots done, and then get that information over to us so we can calculate the quantities, and then they can give us a quote on that. And then we can prepare a change order. And I think the administrator was planning on talking to the council about the possibility of calling a special meeting to consider just that change order. So we can have an approved change order, so the contractor can actually bring in the engineered fill, get that placed, so he can get the concrete footings poured once he's got the stable trench.
So it'd be up to us, and we would be holding up if we didn't make the change. Or if we held off, it delays everything.
Correct. Yeah.
It's possible. The thing is, we want to get this turned around to USDA as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Because they won't do anything until we approve it.
Yeah.
So Joe, do you want to talk about what they gave you based on the 12 inches
Sure.
of an
Yeah.
estimated cost?
And just to follow up on your comment about the USDA,
what we're talking about here.
if there wasn't USDA financing on this project, it was just locally funded, we could just have the work done and document the change and bring the change order back to you next month. But USDA wants the change orders in place as much